23andMe was just hacked, and now your user data might be for sale on the black market. Just earlier this week, user data was stolen in a targeted attack against Ashkenazi Jews. Over 1 million data points exclusively about Ashkenazi Jews were harvested, as well as seemingly hundreds of thousands of users of Chinese descent were impacted by this leak. This is not good news to come out, for your genetic information is very valuable, and this is proving that point perfectly. While this is a negative, I would like to take the attention that it is garnering and redirect it towards the idea of decentralized science and how blockchain fixes this. I made a really good video on YouTube about this, and I want to play it with you real quick so we can establish a baseline of what happened. It was just hacked, and now your DNA is for sale on the black market. $1,000 gets you 100 profiles, which means your DNA is worth about $10. Or for those high rollers out there, 100 grand gets you 100,000 profiles. People's worst fears are coming true right now, and the craziest part is that 23andMe can't do anything about it. God User here released 1 million lines of data. So people's name, sex, date of birth, their health status, and obviously all relatives have now been leaked and are for sale. Oh, and your geographic location. Now this hack is only for people who opted into receiving those DNA relative matches, which was probably everyone. Why else are you getting your genome sequenced? A spokesperson at 23andMe said that we were made aware of certain profiles that were compiled through access to individual 23andMe accounts. There is no indication at this time that there's been a data security incident within our system. That's very important. That means that someone high up in the company who had access to everyone's login information, they got hacked. Amateur hour. This wouldn't have happened if they had stored everything on chain, but because it's not, 23andMe was just hacked. You see that loop? That loop on that video was really good. Now, the first thing I need to say is that no one at 23andMe in the company, none of their C-suite executives were hacked. That was a mistake that I made. I was jumping the gun a little bit too early on that. This was a credential stuffing attack in which people were using the same password across multiple websites, and so a previous data breach on a different website allowed for this hacker to come and grab users' profile information, users' data to log in, and then they went into 23andMe and grabbed all of the data about those profiles in which they had access to. So they were specifically targeting the Ashkenazi Jews and some people of Chinese descent. There was a data leak somewhere else, so that was wrong. There were two main things that people in the comments were very concerned about or questioning. The first was, what would they do with this data and this information? What's the benefit of buying it? I'm just curious, my brain isn't working. That's fine, coffee. We will establish that. The second question here was, what does that last line even mean? If you mean a crypto blockchain, everything is public. If you mean a private blockchain, that's just called a database. So I'm going to attack those one at a time and provide some clarity for everyone because they bring up good points. If you're unfamiliar with 23andMe, it is a genetic profiling website in which you swab the inside of your mouth, you get a little bit of saliva, send it in a test tube, and send it over to 23andMe. They will then analyze 0.02% of your genome to give some genetic information about you, namely who you're related to. You can get the basic service for $119 or a health and ancestry service for $229 or everything and a membership for $229 as well. So it looks like they're having a little bit of a discount on the premium here. So they will sequence part of your genome to tell you if you have any basic health information risks or just who you're related to. This is good for two things. Number one is any pharmaceutical company is going to pay a hefty sum for this type of data because then they can advertise to you and say, hey, would you like to come join our clinical trial? It looks like you have this biological marker that puts you at a higher risk for diabetes, right? And let's come try this new insulin medication or Alzheimer's, which is just a different form of diabetes. Come try this new insulin medication. Combine those two words there. They already do this. 23andMe has already been selling your genetic information to a company like GSK. You signed off permission on this when you swab your mouth and send it over to 23andMe. It's in the fine print that they're allowed to do this. So they profit off of selling you this package, and then they profit off of selling your data to companies who want to advertise to you and use your data for profits, namely pharmaceutical companies. So what does GSK want your genetic data for? It can help pharmaceutical companies in several ways. The first, the company can identify people who are susceptible to developing different diseases and streamline their recruitment for clinical trials. The largest demand for genetic data comes from the companies who are looking to get on board with precision medicine, this practice of developing treatments for individuals based on several characteristics, including their genetics. So your genetic data is extraordinarily valuable. Pharmaceutical companies want it, and advertisers honestly want it. The advertisers, you can do targeted campaigns when you have an ad based off of age, gender, your household income, where you are in the world. And if you remember during this clip, part of the information that they stole was your age, your sex, where you are in the world. All of these key factors to make a targeted ad campaign work better was in those profiles, because those profiles were not put behind any kind of secure wall that separated them from just the outside harms, the hackers. As soon as an individual got into someone's profile, they got access to all of that information, which is not the same had those profiles been put on a blockchain. We'll touch on that a second, but first I want to bring up just the costly impact here, okay? Because some of you are probably looking at this and saying $200 to get sequenced is an egregious amount of money to spend right now. This is a very small sliver of your genome that they're actually sequencing. Other companies will sequence your entire genome. In fact, just for, how much is it here? I believe it was around $300. Yeah, 350 euros. So a lot more expensive, but you have to remember, these people are doing, 23andMe does 0.02% of your genome. These people are doing closer to 90% of your genome. This is down dramatically from when they first sequenced a human genome. So how much did the Human Genome Project cost? This was the first time that our genetic information was sequenced in its entirety, or about 90% of its entirety, as much as they could do without error. This genome project was estimated to be about $3 billion and to take 15 years. They started this back in 1990. In the early 90s. I believe the initial development started in 1988 when they thought it was going to be impossible to do this. And then after 15 years, they completed it for an astounding cost in the billions of dollars. No longer is it that expensive. We've been on an exponential, or like a limit function to zero when it comes to the cost to sequencing. Even faster, we are decreasing even faster than Moore's Law. Moore's Law is a guideline generally that you can follow for new technological advancements to make the price of things cheaper. If you go look at TVs are a good prime example for this. When they first came out, they were super expensive and they didn't work too well. As time's progressed, they've gotten cheaper and they work better. That's based off of Moore's Law. And the cost to sequence a genome has exponentially fallen compared to even Moore's Law. And I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon because of what you get from sequencing a genome. That information is so valuable that I think we're going to reach an equilibrium point very soon in which that data you get is worth more than what it costs to sequence that genome. Companies like 23andMe are not going to get to that point, which is why they charge you to sequence it. Companies like Genomes.io, I believe are reaching that point fairly soon, in which you can invest $350 to get your genome sequenced and then have opportunities to make money based off of that information. If you scroll, or if I scroll, I think I might have lost it. No, right here. Right here, an example that they are giving on their website. You can see you will earn $60 to sell to GSK, the same exact company, and they will use that information in your genome to research and to help medical advancements. Now, this is just an example. I don't know that it's going to be exactly $60, right? But I do know that companies are paying hand over fist for your data, your genetic data, which is why it's critical that that information remains secure, okay? That information has to be put in somewhere that we know no one is going to gain access to, just like a vault on the blockchain. an encrypted vault using SEVES technology to create a fully encrypted vault for users' DNA. This creates a seed phrase. So no more is it just going to be user 123 password ABC, right? That's super easy to hack. You could have a very similar thing for your profile here, but there's an additional wall that is that 12-word seed phrase before you gain access to any of the genetic information that was sequenced. And you are the only person with that seed phrase who can have access. In order for another company to gain access, you have to sign off on a smart contract saying, yes, you pay me $10, I will give you access to this one sliver of my genetic information. Genomes DAO, genomes.io, doesn't even have access to your genetic information. Once it's sequenced, it's done. It goes onto the blockchain and you're good to go. It's yours and you are set to profit off of it. This is a massive field and there's other companies doing it. This is not just because it's such a big opportunity. It's like a $38 billion opportunity expected by the end of this decade. There's a lot of companies trying to gain access to this and kind of like put their foot in the market, right? So you've got Nebula Genomics, which just did a huge marketing push. They're probably going to market soon, or they just went to market. They might be having their token launch or something. And then another company I saw doing it was Shivam, but I could not get on their website. This didn't allow me on. So there's a lot of companies doing it. There's a lot of opportunity here. 23andMe, come on guys, get your shit together. No, it's not necessarily their fault, but they started this company before we had access to decentralized science. Now that you're aware of decentralized science, you should hit a follow, you should subscribe, like this video, because I'm doing dives into decentralized science because I believe it is an underserviced market on the terms of influencers. So hopefully you enjoyed this video because your time is your most valuable asset. Make sure you're investing it wisely.